So thank you everyone for coming. So my name is Colin Keogh and I'm an engineer and work in the startup space and development space here up in Dublin. And I've done and supported an awful lot of events in the southeast, an awful lot of startup weekends. We did one in Waterford just this year, and similar in Kilkenny with John, and then in like the Hatch Lab in Gorey. So it's a great region and with an awful lot of innovation and activity in it. So John asked me to come and moderate this panel. So we're going to start today. We have our panelists exactly, Joy Redmond from Sonru. We have Margaret Ahern from HubSpot, and then John Clear from Red Lemonade. So what we're going to start off with was if I can ask the three panelists to give us a little bit of an intro, what your background is, what you currently do, and your connection to the Southeast.
Yeah, well, my name is Joy Redmond. I'm with Sonru. I was a marketing graduate and in Dublin for years. And then in 2005, I decided to move home to Gorey in Wexford. And I was commuting for a few years to DIT. I was a lecturer there in New Venture Enterprise because I'd always been involved in startups, marketing, and technology companies and web companies. And then after a few years commuting and doing that, I decided to set up my own business, flexitimers.com, which was the first kind of flexible work jobs board in Ireland. But unfortunately, we launched just the same week as the recession. but all was not lost. I was based in Nova UCD, and then from there, I had done the ARC Labs, which is the New Frontiers project in Waterford. And I had met Ed, who had founded Sonru. And the CTO of Sonru had joined Sonru. He had his own company on that, and they headhunted me because they saw the kind of disruption I was making. But unfortunately, there was no business model. So they headhunted me to be their marketing manager, and I was there for a few years. And then in the last few years, in any other job I've ever joined, I always come in as the marketing manager, and I always end up doing a different role, which I have decided is more important than being the marketing manager. And it's usually something to make good marketing happen. And I'm the head of research. So basically, I interview all our clients and get those client stories. And I do a lot of data analysis to make the proof of something that is a disruptive technology that it does work. And so I'm there a few days a week. I also do my own freelance businesses, Contenta. I have a little greeting card company called Trustworthy. And I've just launched a online art writing journal called WTFisArt.com with a few people I did an art writing course with. And other than that, I'm just at the beach. So that's me.
Nice.
Hi everyone, I'm Maggie. I'm a product manager with HubSpot, who are based up in Dublin. I'm originally from Waterford, and I left Waterford 20 years ago and lived in Limerick, lived in Dublin, and then I lived in Canada for about 10 years. And my husband, who's from Kilkenny, we had 2 kids over in Canada, and we decided, it was time to move back. So I was very lucky at the time. I was working for Expedia, the online travel company. So they let me basically move home and work fully remote from Kilkenny. And then just in January this year, I started with HubSpot up in... So I started with HubSpot up in Dublin in January of this year, and at the moment I commute to Dublin 2 days a week and work from home in Kilkenny the other 3 days.
And John, anything to add from the first session?
No, not really. I suppose, I moved to Dublin in '99 and actually had 2 redundancies by the time 2002 came around, just with the dot-com boom at the time. So, I was far worse done than Welsh coal miners in the 80s in terms of being made redundant. But I always was coming back to Kilkenny anyway to work because I just knew it would be a good place to start. But I don't think there's much more I can add to it really on my story so far.
Good. So from your perspective, each one of your individual perspective, the Southeast is a great region for personal career development for lots of different aspects. So I'll ask all of you, what do you think are the inherent benefits from a personal perspective of developing a career in the Southeast? What do you think?
I think for myself it was that to set up for me to, if I was to have started and set up back in 2002 in Dublin, just the cost would have been a lot. So just my rent alone would have actually covered me for an office in Kilkenny, and my expenses for a month is the same price really. So I just knew that if you, especially with technology moving so fast, whether you are doing a startup or whatever it is, it's kind of important to have the space and the time to work out what it is and not be completely dreading the money aspect all the time. And I think there's a huge opportunity for companies who are, tech startups and stuff like that to actually move to somewhere in the southeast for the simple reason that it's just going to be a lot easier.
So, and on that technology perspective, what sort of technologies have you used personally to help smooth that transition? Is there any standouts in particular that other people could adapt and use?
I think that what I found is that, in terms of like Google Hangouts and things like that, we have a lot of clients that would be all over, and we use it quite a lot with clients, and not enough people use things like Google Hangouts, and the broadband is excellent down in Kilkenny for me anyway. It's really, really good. And then I suppose now we moved into the digital aspect, so there's not as much running around with print and paper and things like that anymore, so you can really, you don't have to, I felt like you don't have to be detached to places like Dublin to make that happen. So technology does definitely free you up. The tools are free me up more and more so each time.
So it was always a dream of mine to live back in the southeast, and I never really thought it would be possible without making a big sacrifice, because I work in high tech, and I work for really big tech companies, and I guess I was just kind of I got to see the different side of remote working and how companies are very flexible if they find the right person for the role, and kind of like you're talking, like there's so much technology out there to support that. So like when I worked for Expedia, my manager was based in India. I had engineers working in India. I had engineers. Most of my stakeholders were based in Seattle, but like it didn't stop me from doing my job. And I just see like say like Bank of Ireland, they're doing so much to create these like co-working spaces in their banks, and they're being really innovative about thinking of solutions to use the space that they no longer need in the banks, but also supporting companies. And then you see like people like Tracy Kyo, who does the Grow Remote stuff around the country. Like I spoke at one of her first conference last year down in Tralee, and she expected about 50 people there. She had like everything planned for 50 people. There was like 200 people came from like every back arse of nowhere in Ireland, and like it's amazing like the opportunities there. So like I'm kind of coming from it from a slightly different angle in that I don't actually work in the region, but like I feel like I can kind of have my cake and eat it and have everything.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same really. With Sonru, we've a handful of clients in Ireland. I'd be hard-pressed to pick one. Most of our clients are from all over the world, and I interview them in different time zones and stuff like that. So like it really doesn't matter where I'm based. And I think in any sort of smart work or whatever, I used to always say, are you employing me to occupy a desk or to deliver some sort of output at the end of the week? Like I know what I want to achieve, and if the weather's looking pretty good or there's good waves, well, I'm sorry. I'm off to the beach and I'll be back in 2 hours or whatever. And then, but it'll still get done that night and stuff like that. And there hasn't been a problem for like 11 years. You know what I mean? And also, I think if I do a big, huge amount of data analysis, and you do this big, huge stats thing for several weeks, and then you're about to, and you've written your report, and then you want to write your intro or something like that, a good long swim. And, think about the stats as I'm going down the water, and then come back. So it's things like that, that you don't, and I'm literally 5 minutes from the sea. And then so everybody works remote, and then obviously the broadband was a bit of an issue for a few years. It seems to be correcting a bit. I live out in the country, and I have that e-fibre now, so it's fab. And then we have now, I don't know, I thought I saw John there earlier, we have this beautiful building in Gorey, the Hatch Lab, which is a co-working space, part funded by the bank and by the county council, and I go in there maybe once a week or every few weeks or whatever, and that's very sociable and stuff like that. So you have the best of both worlds, and you have all the benefits of living in the country, but then you still have access to a career, which is very important. Obviously, you don't want to kind of sell out and just give up the dream.
On that, the importance of co-working spaces, they're everywhere around the world now. People work more independently than ever before, but they're a vital element because you can't work on your own all the time. So how important do you think they are to that remote work and kind of working in non-standard locations and outside city centres?
I think it's really important. I think it's a safety net for employers maybe in Dublin if they think, okay, if they're in there 1 or 2 days a week, at least they're not at home watching TV. No, I don't watch TV anyway. I'm certainly not going to do it during office time. So it's a safety net for them, but it is sociable. And like I went in one day, and within an hour of being in there, I was asked to speak at an event and do something else. You know what I mean? So like there are benefits obviously rather than sitting at home on Slack or on, you know what I mean, or on Skype and stuff like that. So it is nice to get out and chat to people. You know,
and still that human interaction that everyone needs.
Yeah, but it's also good networking as well. Like I know one of the guys, Dave, he moved in there about 6 months ago, I think, and he said that about once a week he gets a new client just from the building. You know, from somebody being in for a meeting or whatever. So it is, you know, it's worthwhile, you know. So.
And then Mike, you mentioned co-working spaces as well. You in agreement? Is there anything else?
Yeah, no, they're great. They're really good. Like I haven't probably used them to their full potential, but like I've used the Bank of Ireland one when like the electricity is gone, and my husband works from home as well. So like when we want to just totally get away from each other, it's like handy to have somewhere where we can go. But yeah, like, and I think there's probably a lot more that they can do, because you know what? I was only saying to my husband the other day, like our street, like literally, I was like, nearly every house on our street is occupied during the day now because everyone's working from home, and there's so much talent out there, and there's just like figuring out the ways to tap into that. Like I see all the people going up to Dublin, like on the train every day, and you know the people working from home, and there's just, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but that's.
Our neighbours actually got an extension, and I was saying, "Oh, nice extension. So you know, what are you getting done?" And I said, "No, it's for the office because they're actually working remotely now." So I think if you're in the building trade, it's a good area to look at, you know. But I think for these kind of hubs as well, or these communal workspaces, I think I think we'll see more of in the future of those is where you will actually find companies will send a team or 2 or 3 people out to a hub that has loads of different interests and people there. And what they'll be using that is to bounce ideas off of people. And I think that's where you're going to see new companies forming if the right people are put into them. And I think companies will begin to realise that they send the 2 other members of staff who are working on something down to a hub where there's other people working on certain industries that are succinct with what they're doing. I think we're going to see a lot of new ideas and new companies forming.
That's an approach that's used an awful lot in the co-working spaces in the US, San Francisco in particular. It's the happenstance interactions and occurrences between people, the ideas that people generate. And
it's the skunk works of the future.
Exactly, it is the skunk works. It's you have a cool idea, I have a cool idea, let's do it together. And that happens face to face. And I think in some ways Ireland has an advantage over the US, as in we talk more. We're friendlier. We spend more time on talking and interacting with each other. But then on that as well, so the growth of co-working spaces and the growth of remote work, if you're dealing with traditional industries or industries that are hesitant to change and disruption, how do you think, have you found any backlash, especially with video interviewing in particular? How have people in traditional industries adapted to these new ways of working?
Well, because of my fantastic research, they're sold. But no, in terms of traditional industries, I think there was a move in London years because the rental prices, so office space is so expensive in Dublin. Like one of my friends is a partner in a serious accountancy firm, and she said what's happening in London is that all the actual accountants and people doing the books in these huge firms are doing them from Surrey and places like that, and then they just have this beautiful flagship city centre office where they have their board meetings and stuff like that. And I think we're probably going to see that sort of thing. And her company were asking her to look into that, maybe taking a floor somewhere in Gorey and having like the 50 serious accountants doing the work, and then still having the beautiful Fitzwilliam or wherever. So you might see something like that. But I think it depends on your industry. Like one of my friends is a company secretary of a PLC. That's her kind of, there's very limited opportunities in PLCs in the Southeast region. Like there's a handful, and she's worked for most of them. So you have to be a bit savvy and say, well, what's your skill set, or who are your target market, and do your research before moving down and discovering there's only 2 PLCs in the area, stuff like that, you know.
I think as well, I met a guy called Doug Powell, who's the head of design for IBM, and he was saying that they were opening new offices, and they had an office in New York, and they wanted to build a design team, so I was just talking to him about that. And he was saying that they decided to move to South by Southwest. What's the name of that town?
Austin.
Austin, Texas. Yeah, they decided to move to Austin, Texas because they wanted a cool, hip place. It wasn't going to cost as much as New York. It was easy to get around, and it would attract the right people. So he said that they moved the whole design department out to Austin, Texas, and it's really working out for them. So I think you will see a lot more of some of the larger companies, whether they will push and go remote, or they're actually let's put them in a nice spot where they can have a good living and you know have disposable income and have a good time. And I think they're going to attract more people with that kind of attitude.
And even from your perspective from HubSpot is not one of those companies. They're willing to embrace new technologies, but have clients in numerous traditional industries. Have you found any kind of reluctance or hesitance to move towards this co-working, remote work from home, flexible working arrangements?
Well, I think any of the companies who are kind of more averse to that, you know, they're just going to fall behind. Like I was at a thing in HubSpot just before this, and I was talking to another girl who's a product manager there, and she has young kids like me, and we were just chatting about it, and it's like, you know, I could never go back to just 9 to 5 working in an office. You know, like I want to be able to pick up my kids from school, and you know, like last week, like my kid was doing a play, and you know, different things like that. And I think, you know, and I think you see as well, like the traditional role of women is changing as well in families. And you know, my husband's the same. The two of us work from home, and we want to have that flexibility that we can be around our kids, and you know, they go to bed, and then we can catch up and work and that sort of thing. So I think that companies they'll just fall behind, and they won't get the right talent if they don't adapt. Yeah.
Okay. And then it's on a similar market, if you are one of these maybe traditional companies or a smaller company that's looking to grow and based in the southeast, is there anything they can do to make the process easier, to allow people to move out of the city? Like if you have done it in the past, is there anything at that stage you would have loved to say, I would have loved if this support was available via the company or via local authority, you know, exit supports nearly?
Well, there is, like I have set up 2 companies since I moved home, and there is excellent support, you know what I mean? So like if you're a startup yourself, there's like you have your Leos and your Enterprise Irelands and stuff like that. And I did that, like as I said, that Arc Labs New Frontiers program was excellent, you know what I mean, and other little projects around. So I think there's definitely stuff for startups there, and it's kind of a nice, very friendly. Everyone's so kind of like, it's a bit like we were saying about the co-working space, because people are home and they're trying to get stuff moving or whatever. It's a very high energy area, I think. But in terms of companies, I think maybe a grant or something like that. Like I was suggesting to somebody recently, because of cost of rent or whatever, maybe if you were to give a grant to your employee, you know, if you wanted to go 100% remote, and some people don't like that idea. They like going in and chatting and having the tea and all that. I said if you could give a little grant, like say maybe 50 or 60 euro a week towards co-working space or something like that, which would be significantly cheaper than taking out an entire building, you know what I mean, for 40 staff, you know. So.
And then how about in a slightly different situation like the one you're in now at the minute, you know, kind of a couple of days in Dublin, the rest remote?
Yeah, like I think the way it is today, I think if you want to start up your own business, like you kind of have to go and you have to figure out everything and go through all the information. And there's so much out there. Like, you know, there are so many people who are commuting to Dublin from the southeast, and creating opportunities that information is more available to them and people know that. Like, you know, there's so many people out there who would like to start a business, and I think a lot of the stuff that you guys do with, you know, the starter weekends and stuff like that, and promoting more of that maybe in the southeast, and like the stuff that John's doing with Tech Thursday, like I think that has created such an amazing network in Kilkenny, and just having more of that and more collaboration across the southeast and not just within the specific counties or towns.
And then the same then, John, to you, your example from earlier on, is there anything that guy that moved to Kilkenny has told you then afterwards it would be nice if this was there or this support was available, or even yourself when you moved down there?
Yeah, I mean, like when I moved back, actually, I just found it was a little lonely for myself, but that actually changed, because it turns out people, when they get to about 25, they start coming back, and 30, especially 30, and I think a lot of people who come to Tech Thursday, they're all like a lot of the new people are all kind of around mid-30s and skilled people, so they're coming back. So What was the question again?
I had one thing to say, that for the first few years I moved home, I was commuting and I had one foot in Dublin, and it was I felt very unsettled, to be honest. And I only kind of, when I stopped kind of commuting and started with a kind of local firm or my own company or whatever, it was then when I felt more grounded, you know what I mean, rather than constantly racing up to Dublin, you know what I mean? So I think you have to battle is with yourself and your mindset of, you know, either you're moving down, you know what I mean, obviously you can nip up for meetings and stuff like that, but I wasn't joining stuff, and you know what I mean, I wasn't a part of the community as such until I had kind of decided after a few years, this can't go on, like, I mean, because I had left when I was 16 after I finished school. I didn't know, you know, a lot of the people I knew then had gone like myself, so I needed to kind of create a new life for myself, and it's very hard to do that if you're kind of constantly looking towards the city, you know.
And then kind of from that question was from a personal perspective, from like a governmental perspective. What is there anything else? You said there were great supports offered from the Leos, and there still are. Is there anything else you think it would be beneficial for them to add? There's some people from local authorities here and development regions. What do you think they're missing? What do you think is the next bit to increase the impact of attracting people to come and move into the region?
I think it's going to happen anyway, because Dublin is a breaking point in terms of office space and living. You know, like like I have a son in college, and you know, the rents here are not nice. You know, and but I would say that I think the whole idea of kind of communicating back that, you know, you can have hubs down in the country. You don't have to have the whole workforce down there. You can have more efficiencies. They'll have a better quality of life. I think that's a piece that you could go definitely to the regions and say, well, this is definitely a little marketing campaign you could run with. You know?
From my perspective, from a different perspective, coming back from Canada, honestly, when we moved back, it was just wall after wall after wall, like, that we had to go climb over to move back and build a life for ourselves in Kilkenny. Like, the only reason that we were really able to do it was because Expedia were willing to support me and help me, and it was just, that was really challenging, because I have so many friends over in Canada, and you know, they're kind of like, oh, I wouldn't mind moving back, but it's so hard. It was only that we were so motivated to come back, and that we had the support of Expedia, that we did come back. But like, there is literally nothing there to support expats if they want to come back. And there's so many amazing professionals all over the world that would love to come back.
Actually, in Denmark, one of our friends moved home. She's from Copenhagen, and she's on a 7-year tax-free break now for attracting, you know, I think she's an engineer by trade, even though she hasn't worked in engineering in about 10 years. But, you know, to attract people from STEM or whatever back into Denmark, and that's exceedingly attractive for her. And
so
her
an
family.
Incentive along them lines would be considered.
But then to be kind of, oh, that's benefit in kind, what about us? And, you know, but, you know.
A great way of making things complicated.
Yeah. But, like, if to get people down the country, you could do it, as opposed to, you know, from overseas. Or
and it's kind of similar to what you said, when people get to 25 or 30, they want to come home and have kids. Like, it's considered one of the best places in the world to raise children in Ireland, because you've got family and history. At the minute, from my experience in the US, there's an awful lot of engineers and tech developers and company founders from quite famous, successful companies that are nearing that stage. They have quite significant exits coming up, and when the exits happen, they're going to come back here again. And they don't want to live in Dublin, because you lived in San Francisco, they don't want to live in the city. So there will be a stage where all the regions are going to have to compete to try and attract these people, and they're just going to keep building. And it's just where they build from then on in is the question.
And I mean, there is supports, and we can go on about the different kinds of supports that are out there. But what I think is really important as well is that if, like, a government organisation is trying to sell you the fact to come down to the southeast, that's well and good. But if the people there can sell it to you, it's a much easier sell, and it's much more direct. It's more human, even, you know. So I think it's all about, like, the Tech Thursday and events like these, getting out and the people on the ground talking. And I think that's where the connections will be made.
Well, kind of going from that point, from an individual person's perspective, if there's somebody sitting in the audience that's looking at moving out of Dublin, what do you individually say to attract them to the region? What would your recommendations for them to be? How do they make the process smoother? Why should they come to the southeast? What are the inherent benefits, in your opinion?
Well, for me, I mean, I could never move to Kilkenny because it's inland. You know what I mean? But it depends on your hobbies, I suppose. Like, you know, because you want to make a life. You know, you can have a career anywhere, but it's where you want to make a life. So you have to. I suppose, handpick what sort of facilities or services or clubs or societies or stuff like that from a personal point of view. Like, I'm heavily involved in a lot of water sports down there and stuff. So that has me kind of settled and entrenched in the community, you know, among other things. But I think you have to work out what you want in life and then get your little shopping list and pick your towns.
The
and,
lifestyle element,
yeah,
like, 'cause
yeah.
you need to live. It's
Yeah.
work to live versus live to work.
Yeah.
But it's so varied in terms of the Southeast in that respect as well. Is that even sometimes before work, we go for a walk on the beach in Tramore, which only takes 35 minutes in you know, in the car. So I'm just saying that it's within, like, it's a region where you're 40 minutes maximum away for anything, and that just gives it a completely different perspective. I mean, like, if I'm going to Dublin for work, I can go up on the bus. Like today, it took 1 hour and 40 minutes. It goes every 2 hours. Like, you know, you can get from a wet side of Clonsilla on the way into town. It's going to take you nearly that long, you know.
It takes me an hour to get from North Wicklow into the city centre every day. It's just how people perceive things. Just kind of, it makes a huge difference if that can be explained in a different way, you know. Annie?
So like, well, I'm a Waterford girl through and through. So like, I just think Waterford it's like the most underrated place. Like, there is so much there. And like, a friend of mine, she's a historian, and she was telling me that another historian friend of hers had done she does a lot of research on like coastal towns and stuff. And she said, like, Waterford is just like the Cornwall coast, and Cornwall is like so popular. There's so much going on there, but Waterford just haven't managed to really draw people in and convince people to go there. And there's so much there. There's the city, there's the mountains, there's the coast. It is just so beautiful, and the whole foodie scene there, it's amazing.
And the Copper Coast, is it? Like,
Yeah, it's
amazing.
gorgeous.
I had a blast for the first time when I was down
And there's
there.
Blas, yeah. So that's
I
it.
wasn't hugely impressed.
That's because you're not from Waterford.
It's a soft, flowery bap up here. It's nothing special.
Okay. Quit while you're ahead, Colin.
Unpopular that one was, clearly. But even from that, moving on from that, you've got, 4 or 5 regions in the southeast? And whoever from the southeast region, that was a great idea, packaging them together so they can work together. That's very important. You don't want the regions to be competing, the individual counties to be competing against each other. So how do you see that development as a region going? Do people pick specialities? You know, I know it's very popular in technology now. You know, you had the crypto coast, and you have the Crystal Valley, and you have everyone has these little names. So what do you think is the best approach for that? Should it be done individually as a county, as a body organising it into a region? Do specific counties have specific things, or is it just a more free-form kind of element that you leave it up to the individuals themselves?
I think it should be just a regional thing, not be so clannish and, you know, marking your territory or whatever. Like I say, I was in Kilkenny on Monday. I was in Waterford last week, and I don't feel I needed to get a passport to cross the border. You know what I mean? So
That's just for me.
I think a regional, to have it that it's a viable place to have a career in technology or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Would be enough, and then you can be. And like, the thing is, I commute to Wexford town, and it is, I don't know, 45 minutes away, but it doesn't feel that because you're moving the whole time. You know what I mean? You're not sitting on the Stillorgan dual carriageway panicking, you know, going, oh my God, I'm an hour late.
9 miles, and it takes about an hour, so it's great fun.
So, you know, I think a regional thing would be enough for me, you know.
I think that, I think from my experience anyway, historically, the region hasn't done a great job of working together, but it's starting to change, and you can see it. Like this event wouldn't have occurred a year ago, and you know the thing that was down in Waterford there a while ago that we were at
the Southeast Business Expo.
Yeah, and like the Crystal Valley Tech and all these things, and like I organised an event last year with Carlo IT and WIT and lots of different companies around the region, and the power when all those regions come together, there's just so much power, and I think we just have to really encourage that, because I don't think we've done a good job of that in the past, and I think it's really time to step up and be able to say, this region can compete with Dublin and can, you know, attract really talented people and attract companies to come down here, and I think that's where we just really have to focus.
It would be nice if Waterford could get the university status as well. It would help a lot, I think, you know.
And then a kind of modified version of that to you, John, is in Kilkenny, famous now for animation and artistic things. is that a benefit or a disadvantage in your opinion? Like there's
God,
there's beneficial elements as well, but is there instances where there may be companies looking to move and they will move to somewhere else because they erroneously assume, oh, it's animation, it's artistic, it's not technology.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you do have to you have to like change what people have a perception of a place, and I think that's what it's all about really tonight as well. I mean, like, yeah, Kilkenny is really beginning to get known for animation with Cartoon Saloon, but you know, and Kilkenny is also known as a great place to go on a stag or a hen night, you know. But all those, they're all valid things and good things, but I think over time the perception will change. It'll become other things as well. So I think the more that's out there, the better, and you know, the market will decide.
Oh, excellent. So I think that's a good spot to end and open it up for questions. Does anyone have any questions? To any of our panelists? Or final comments then to inspire some questions? Oh, okay.
Margaret, it's interesting that you and your husband both work from home. Is that unusual? I mean, sort of, I would have thought you're the exception that proves the rule. Or
Not in Kilkenny. No, there's a lot of people you meet. Like, I find that most professional couples that I would meet in Kilkenny, at least one of them is either working from home or commuting to Dublin, and it's often the case that both of them are.
And do you have to have a home office or a proper setup? I mean, yeah, I guess you do.
It's a disaster. Like, I'm in our bedroom and he's in the spare bedroom, and then, like, you know, if the door is closed, it means you're in a meeting. So yeah, and then when the kids come, it's just like chaos. Yeah. So no, we are totally disorganized. We don't have a proper setup, and I haven't figured out how to run my life. So
Nobody has.
No.
Nobody has. There's more questions?
Just to be devil's advocate, that you're all very successful and still young, relatively young. So, in terms of career development, is one aspect would be the quality of life is great, but are you dead in the water in terms of your career because you're not close to the centre of power or the centre of climbing the career ladder? Maybe this is as far as it goes.
And that's why I left Expedia, because I was working 100% remote, and I think it can be challenging. From my experience, I think it can be challenging. Yes, definitely. So like, I still have the one foot in the door in Dublin, and I'm still trying to figure out how I can take that foot out of Dublin and either have an opportunity to set up my own business in the region or work for a company in the region. So it is challenging. Yeah.
And either you found any form of limitations from that perspective? Like, is it perceived or unperceived?
I was chatting to a company the other month about something, and he just said, I just want to start off by saying this is 5 days a week in Dublin, and how does that suit you? And I said, well, you know, it's, you know, a lot of customers are all over the world, and, you know, time zones and the usual. And he said, yeah, no, because and he mentioned the person, he said, yeah, no, because he said you'd be going, and when I told him I was chatting to you, he said you'd be going for the remote angle. Yeah. So I'm known for Mrs. Remote, but then I started off 15 years ago with a jobs board, you know what I mean, or about remote working, so there's nothing new there. But it's like, the way I feel about it is, if that's your mindset, I'm not for you. You know what I mean? Like, because like I don't even like swimming in a swimming lane in a pool. I like being in the sea. I do not like being caged in somewhere and hemmed in and told to perform in a certain way or whatever, in a certain, you know, fashion. And I think a lot of people in creative or tech or marketing or whatever are the same. And I think if you try, like, I think I'd end up kind of exploding if I had to. I used to work full-time in offices, and the joke was, oh, Joy's never at her table, because I was somewhere, you know, I think I probably have ADHD, you know what I mean? I just cannot sit down for that amount of time, you know what I mean? So maybe if that's the sort of industry or that you want, you'll probably end up having to be on site if it's a very conservative company or whatever.
But even in that case, it's changing, and it's changing very, very rapidly, because as you said, you have to adapt, or
but
the business goes
this was a
else.
unicorn, like, and it wasn't, you know, and it's a household name. Yeah. And I couldn't believe they were so entrenched in old school, and they were probably younger than me, you know what I mean? So, but anyway, look, But yeah, it is definitely a consideration. But that, you know, that would be the same, you know, that would be even if you're working from home and you lived in Lucan. You know what I mean? It doesn't, I don't think it has to be, you know, living down the country or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, any?
Yeah, I suppose it's supposing what you want. I suppose for our company, I mean, like, in terms of what we do in design, it's completely changed. Now we're into like digital product strategy, and like we're working with companies who can't innovate within; they have to do it outside. And we've had companies come down to Kilkenny to work with us, so they get to go down on a jolly, get out of their office and look at things differently. So we're kind of working in an area now where we're trying to work with companies who are trying to validate high stake challenges, and doing it very, very quickly. And you have to get out of the office to do that, I think. So, there's a lot of talks of working with startups and stuff, and we're beginning to realise we're beginning to start working with end-ups. So, in other words, companies who are existing big and they need to have challenges to innovate. So, they're actually looking beyond their own company. So,
Some new streams of opportunities from traditional
Yes,
industries
it
coming on stream, instilled by this new change.
it's
in way
actually
people
only
work.
beginning. It's only
Yeah,
beginning.
Entrepreneurship or something. What's the word? Is it?
Entrepreneurship,
Entrepreneurship, okay.
whatever that means. So.
Intra, yeah.
Whatever that means.
Yeah.
Anyone else
Is there
have any
somebody
more
there
questions?
that-
Or somebody else have one in the back?
Yeah, just to come back to the Joy and Margaret, you mentioned it, but take a company in Dublin that have, you know, what is 200 or 2,000 or 5,000 employees, and let's say a company has 1,000 employees, and it might have 200 of those travelling from the southeast or Kildare right down to Carlow, Kilkenny, Wexford, whatever. And they're trying to give a better quality of life and a better standard of life to those employees in order to retain them. But why aren't companies like that, in your opinion, why aren't companies like that not using something like the Hatch Lab and Gorey, where there's very reasonably priced rent and where there is, you know, as you say, the lifestyle, whatever. There are probably 5,000 people leaving Wexford every day and
Yeah.
driving to Dublin, taking an hour and a half to drive to Dublin, an hour and a half to drive home. Why haven't companies or those people decided, can I organise to only travel 10 minutes to work and 10 minutes home and work in that remote communal environment?
Well, I think it's kind of preaching to the choir. Like, I know what I want as an actual worker or whatever. And, you know, like when I started FlexiTime, it's within 3 weeks I had 3,000 people registered, and that was nearly pre-social media because people wanted flexible work. The problem is with the company, so I think there's a need for a kind of a very concerted, concise, very strategic sort of a marketing communications campaign at companies to say, this will allow you to retain people, this will allow you to attract people, you know what I mean? But I like somebody saying, oh, should advertise on the buses and stuff like that to the commuters. Again, you're preaching to the choir. You know, the MD or the HR manager isn't on the bus to Wexford, you know what I mean? So I think it needs a kind of a coordinated strategy, which I haven't seen yet, you know.
I know our place in HubSpot, and I know HubSpot's culture is like way ahead of a lot of companies, which is why I joined there. But they have brought in someone specifically as like a remote working director. So her job is just to figure out how they can support remote working across the organization. So like it's easy for someone like me, I work in tech, but like HubSpot's a sales company. So it's a much harder thing to try and figure that out. So I think, you know, when you're seeing the big tech companies like that leading the way in this, I think other companies will follow. And I think it's totally that. It's about marketing it and figuring it out. Like in Dublin, all those WeWork offices, like they're doing such an amazing job. And I think the co-working spaces down in the southeast, like they're starting to come up now, and they will. I'm sure they will probably do this.
The man in Cork is doing a good job. Republic of Work.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he could learn a few tricks from him, I'd say.
Yeah.
You know?
They've really embraced the idea down there and embraced what Cork is about and the culture and the people and the lifestyle and
They're like, they have a News Talk studio in there now.
podcast studios.
Yeah,
And
so News Talk, your man, what's his name? Andrew, I can't remember his name. He sometimes broadcasts from there. Like, that's a superb coup. You know what I mean? To have something like that, you know. So.
any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. People like DC, it's great. Like you need those ambassadors and those kind of enterprise-led ambassadors, and I think they're the people that people listen to, and they get shit done, you know.
I think we have time for one more, maybe. Does anyone else have a question? Was there another one over here? No? No. One down the back, okay.
It's just amusing, really. I'm just wondering if anyone knows. Someone mentioned 5,000 people going from Wexford to Dublin every day. I'm wondering if anyone knows, like, if you put Kilkenny, Carlow, Waterford, and Wexford together, how many people actually do go to Dublin every day, and what are their skill sets?
There was a survey actually,
Yeah.
and it was about
200 people. If a company had 200 people down here, but if we had a database, or someone had a database that says there is 600 people with this skill set driving up from this area every day, that's the thing that I don't know if the IDA could use that, or Enterprise Ireland could use that to attract companies, say, because companies are looking for quality people, right, and to develop the assets. So if they say, look, there's a shortage of technical labour all over the world, so there's 600 people here in this area that travel to Dublin every day, could possibly go to work. I mean, that's a very sellable commodity to a multinational or to an Irish company for either relocating some of their units down there or to for investment.
yeah.
So if you know what we have, you know
Yeah.
what you can sell.
John, could you answer that there?
Actually, I can. Specifically, I can answer about Galway. Sure, as I run Patchland in Galway. And we got research done by Maynooth University in the year report. 1,200 people leaving Galway every morning with ICT skills and financial service skills. And that's taken straight from the last assistance. So yeah, 1,200 people are leaving Galway every day. So the talent is there, and I mean it's there in black and white. The question is, what exactly is their talent? Is it Python? Is it PHP? The Pacifics? I still believe, though, if a company was to move to Galway tomorrow, they have a choice of 1,000 people, probably 20 people for every Pacific position they want. You won't get that in Dublin, or London, or even San Diego. So that is amazing.
And also another one is the retention is very high down in the country. But, we're more promiscuous in Dublin. You move every year or 2 years or whatever. But like in Sonru alone, there's like, I know I'm kind of freelance and part-time and stuff like that, but there have been people there for about 8 years in sales roles, and that's unheard of, so if you treat people well and they're happy in their work and environment and stuff like that, you will retain them, so.
I also believe there's an opportunity for companies in Dublin. What has happened over in Silicon Valley, a lot of the large companies have taken over Silicon Valley, so the smaller startups are way up in San Francisco and nearly Seattle at this stage. The exact same is happening in Ireland. It's great. When I heard the LinkedIn is taking another 400 jobs, that means the smaller businesses that come from America are being priced out of Dublin between Google, Facebook, LinkedIn. They'll move down to us. And if they don't move their headquarters, there'll be second site locations anyway. So, yeah.
Brilliant.
I think it's a matter of time, and that gentleman asked the perfect question about career advancement. It is a huge question. However, though, the people making those decisions are still wearing shirts and ties. The people, it's a matter of time before we change the way we do things. So that's going to change naturally anyway.
Great discussions for afterwards. So I want to thank Joy, Margaret and John. So if you give them a round of applause, thank you very much.